All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this workshop about primitive skills. Let's just take a couple seconds, let everybody kind of filter in, and let me make sure my stuff is all correct. That way, my screen doesn't flip out on everyone. Make sure everything goes smoothly here. Um, while we're waiting here, we have a contact form below if you want to. If anybody has any questions they want to ask, at the end we're going to be doing a 15-minute, about 10 to 15 minutes of answering question and answer. See how much we can squeeze in there. Try to get this all done without taking too long. But I guess let's go ahead and we'll get started with this real quick. I'll start off by explaining who we are. Lisa and I have been actively prepping for almost 5 years now, and I say actively because in some way or another we've always been preppers by definition. Lisa has had that better safe than sorry attitude her whole life. She's a registered nurse specializing in wound care, and because of this, she's seen firsthand this entitled society that we live in, and she knows that how they react in her office is just a microcosm of how they're going to react in a real crisis. Myself, I've always questioned everything, and this attitude kind of got me in a little bit of trouble when I was younger, but I've always asked why. And as a matter of fact, when everyone else did the same thing because they were told to or because everyone else did, that kind of raised a big red flag for me. I was never worried about being one of the popular kids because to me, they were living that cookie cutter lifestyle. And I still feel the same way today. It really bothers me to see people walking through life like a robot and refusing to face the fact that something could go very wrong, and they don't want to see this because it doesn't fit into their plans or it just scares the crap out of them. And that's why we decided to start Survivalist Prepper in the Academy, to get people to see that it's not just about doomsday, it's about being responsible. And most preppers are not these people that we see on TV. We created Survivalist Prepper with that in mind. We don't focus on conspiracy and politics. We focus on things that we can control. Nothing in life is guaranteed, but we can create our own luck. And by this I mean prepping shouldn't make us it should make us feel more confident and not more afraid. I don't want to be that guy saying, "Well, I wish I did. I wish I didn't have to go to Walmart right now in a SHTF situation." I feel more confident because I can say, "I'm glad I don't have to go to Walmart right now." A lot of the time, people's first introduction to preparedness is because of fear or because something happened to them, or they're just worried about something that could happen. And the first thing they see is someone preying on that fear, selling them something that could quote unquote save their life, or making them feel even more anxious about the future, and possibly possibly can't talk, possibly causing them to put on the blinders and just ignore the problems and put their head back in the sand. We want to show people that we're not any crazier than anyone else, and neither are you. And as a matter of fact, I think we have a better grasp on reality than these people that have their heads buried in the sand. So before this, let me explain what the bonuses are before we get into this 7 pillars here. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the workshop. I'm going to try to save about 10 minutes for that. Anybody that submits one of their questions, I'm going to kind of draw names out of a hat and give away 10 signed copies of my book, Be Prepared for Anything. And like I said, those would be kind of random. I'll also be taking the notes for you. I've got a downloadable PDF that has everything that we're going to talk about here tonight. So you can just kind of sit back and watch and relax and listen. And also on that downloads page, which I'll give you the link at the end of this workshop, it'll have a PDF download of the Prepared for Everything. Amazon won't let me give away the mobile friendly edition or anything like that, so it's got to be the PDF. But that's available for everyone for free as well. So finally, before we get into the workshop here, um, I have a question for everyone, and I want to see if your answer is the same as in the beginning of this webinar as it is in the end of this webinar. So what do you think the most important tool that you own is? And not talking about knowledge, because I think that's the most important tool we have. But what if you had one thing that you could take with you, say you had to bug out, and you had one thing you could take, everything else was taken away from you? What would that one thing be? And we'll go over this at the end of the webinar. We'll see what the answers are. But let's go ahead and get into this real quick. The first one I've got here is critical thinking. And if we were forced to leave everything we own, but we were, you know, we would need to apply this critical thinking. Critical thinking applies to all aspects of preparing and survival. Anytime you make a decision, you need to make sure that that decision gives you the best chance for survival. If you're in the middle of nowhere and you have 1 liter of water, you need to make a choice about where you're going to go to get that water. And if we have the knowledge and apply this critical thinking, we can increase our chances of actually finding that water. Now, what exactly is critical thinking? Critical thinking applies to all aspects of preparing, not just wilderness survival or urban survival. It applies to everything that we do. The fact that we don't take everything at face value means that we're critically thinking at a really basic level. But let's kind of define that just a little bit further. Rationalization is when we rely on reason rather than emotion. We need to require evidence and follow that evidence where it leads. We need to be more concerned with finding the best explanation rather than just being right. We all love being right. And we're always asking questions. We're thinking critically when we recognize our emotional impulses, or we recognize our own assumptions and prejudices, and we're being completely honest about the situation at hand. And we always need to have an open mind. We need to evaluate all reasonable influences like weather and geography and all the different stuff around us, and consider a bunch of different possibilities and viewpoints and perspectives. Think things through, and don't make snap judgments. We need to be willing to accept these kind of new priorities in response to our reevaluation of the situation at hand. And like I said, we all love to be right. It's just human nature. So naturally, our own biases are going to weigh more heavily than something that we don't understand, and that's why it's so important to learn all of this stuff. And critical thinkers by nature are skeptical. We're active. We're not passive, and we're open to new ideas and perspectives, and we're willing to challenge our own beliefs. We might think that we've got everything figured out, but it takes a stronger person to admit, hey, mate, I didn't I didn't know as much about this as I thought. So let's quickly define what a non-critical thinker is. They take a really simplistic view of the world, and they see things in only black and white. And because of this, they don't recognize all the different small things, the related elements. They take their facts as the only relevant ones, and they take their perspective as the only sensible one. And their goals are, this, it's the way I do it. This is the way it's supposed to be. It has to be, because I'm absolutely positive about this. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to get into some of these primitive skills. I just wanted to cover this first because any decision we make in a survival situation needs to be well thought out and calculated. So let's go ahead. Here we've got water is the second pillar here. So let's get into water. And water is the most valuable resource we have, and finding water is going to dictate our travel plans. And there are a lot of different ways to find water. If we just kind of use our critical thinking skills. Animals need water, and this includes humans. And if we know the habits of some of these animals, they could actually lead us to water. So before we get into all that, let's talk about what filtering actually does. Filtering takes out the bacteria and parasites like Cryptosporidium. It's important to understand how filtering works, because we can't see all of these little things, so we need to make sure that we're actually getting them out. And filtering is measured in microns, like a life straw here. A life straw filters down to, and that's not a life straw, but a life straw here filters down to about 0.02 or 0.2 microns, or a Sawyer mini filter that filters down to 0.1 microns. And the way this works is the water is forced through the hollow filters or fibers, which contain pores that are less than 0.2 or 0.1 microns, depending on the filter and the filter you're using. Now this is great, but we need to know, how big are these parasites and bacteria that we need to take out are. Giardia is about 8 to 12 microns in size. Cryptosporidium is about 4 to 6 microns in size. And bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli are about 0.2 to 4 microns in size. Now, so all these filters should take out all of that stuff. but viruses are around 0.004 to zero point 0.1 microns in size. So it's important to know that filtering doesn't remove most of these viruses, and it doesn't remove chemicals or salt from the water either. So basically your filter needs to be small enough in microns to catch all of these harmful bacteria. But remember that it's not going to filter out some of these viruses, and depending on where you get that water, there could be viruses in it. So what purifying does is basically boiling water is the best way to purify water. If we need to keep in mind, what we need to do is keep in mind that if water is in short supply, we need to be careful when we're boiling water because we don't want to boil it all off. Water temperatures at about 160 degrees will probably kill pathogens within about 30 minutes or so. Water temperatures above 185 degrees will kill them in about, in a few minutes or so. So basically, in the time that it takes for water to reach that boiling point of 212 degrees, all of these pathogens will most likely be killed. And even at high altitudes, it might take a little longer at high altitudes because the boiling temperature of water. But if what I do is about 30 seconds is make sure to get it to a rolling boil for about 30 seconds, just because I would rather be safe than sorry. But like I said, just after the drinking water reaches that rolling boil, it's probably safe to drink. Now, there's also a few other purifiers like iodine, bleach, chlorine tablets, and even potassium permanganate. That's tough to say. Potassium permanganate, which has a couple of different properties as well. It can be used for first aid and stuff. Um, but all of these have different instructions, so we need to make sure and use them carefully. Some of them it's a certain amount of drops. Some of them it's a tablet per quart or liter. So all of these we just need to make sure whatever we have in our bug out bag or whatever we're using, we know how to use those properly. But let's say that we don't have any of this stuff and we need to filter and purify water with the tools that we can find. A couple of these are like the cone filter here, which you can take the stuff that you can find in the wilderness, charcoals from a fire, some leaves and branches, some sand, some pebbles, and some tree bark to make that cone. You can even TerraFilter, which is basically you dig a hole either a few feet away from a water source, or if you've got damp ground, you can dig a hole you know, a foot down or so, and get that water. And what it does is it seeps through the hole, it seeps through the earth into the hole, and it kind of filters that out. But regardless of the method used to filter water, you're still going to need to purify it. And filtering only takes out the big chunks like the dirt, the moss, the insects parts. But to kill the bacteria and viruses, you need to boil it. Now in this picture right here, it's got if you don't have a container or anything like that, you can take a log and burn it out or cut it out if you want. It's sometimes it's easier to burn it out. Then you take rocks that you've heated up on the fire and you kind of throw those in the fire and rotate those out until that water becomes boiling water, and then you can kill those bacteria that way. Now, tools to clean water, if you find yourself with nothing, and there are still ways to bring water to a boil, like I said, this bowl right here, but you can use wood, you can use shells, you can heat water on rocks, you can even perch some sort of container. If you put it up far enough above the fire, it will heat the water, but it won't burn the container. Some of these plastic containers and stuff like that, you've got to be real careful of. Some of them are going to burn just if they get a little warm. Some of them will actually, that water will act kind of like a barrier, and it'll heat the water before it actually burns the container itself. And you've got to be, this is it's a little touchy, and it might be a trial and error thing, but you know what? Unfortunately, there's so much trash around the world today that we're probably bound to find something, especially if we're in an urban area. I mean, there's probably something around, and lakes and streams, and people are just rude, I suppose. But there's, you can probably find stuff everywhere, fishing tackle, all that stuff. So let's go ahead and get into the finding food section. And we've all heard the rule of threes. You can go 3 days without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. but not having anything to eat for a couple of days is going to start to affect your decision making process and your focus and your energy. And the same goes through water. You know, we can survive 3 days without water, but after the first day, we're not going to be thinking correctly. So but let's go ahead and look at calories. You know, calories, the average person burns about 1,500 to 2,000 calories a day. And the amount of calories a person needs varies depending on their weight, their metabolism, the physical activity, all of that stuff. But an easy kind of rough estimate calculation is take your body weight and take that times 10. And that's the amount of calories, an average of the amount of calories that you burn just existing, basically just being alive, you burn that many calories. And like I said, this varies taking into account the body makeup and some other things, but it'll give you a rough estimate. And then with this, on a scale from 1 to 10, where would you put your physical activity? You know, for an example here, if you're kind of just sitting there not doing a whole lot, maybe add 200 to 400 calories if you're just resting or waiting. Add 400 to 600 for, you know, some activity, you're collecting firewood or something. Add 600 to 800 if you had to build a shelter that day and you're moderately active, or maybe 800 to 1,000 if you've got to get all that stuff in one day. You've got to collect your firewood, you got to build your fire, you got to build your shelter, all of that different stuff. Or if you walked a long distance, and this can even be more than 1,000. So if you think you've been even more active than that, you know, maybe add 1,500 to that. But that shows you how many calories we can burn a day. And like I said, we can go 3 weeks without food, but it's going to put your mind in a better place, I guess, if you can kind of sustain those calories, if you can maintain that your calorie level. Now, just a rough estimate here. This is a rough estimate because I think, I don't think we're going to be counting calories in a survival situation, writing everything down. But these are some examples. Fish are around 600 calories per pound, and dandelions and foliage and stuff like that are around 4 to 5 calories a cup. So it's going to take a lot of these plants and everything to equal, what you would get from meat. Plus, there's the protein and everything else that you get from meat, um, that you're going to need as well. So you can't just sustain yourself eating dandelions. I guess if you had to, if that's all you have, then you kind of have to do what you have to do. But traps and snares to get these animals. If fishing, we can do that with fishing. We can do these with small game, rabbits and squirrels and stuff like that. Everywhere we go, there's wild animals around us, but we need to remember these are prey animals, and they're used to running and hiding. So because that's what they do, they want to find food without becoming food. And there isn't, the fat of the land like there used to be maybe a couple hundred years ago, but we still can find this stuff. And even though these are prey animals, it doesn't mean it's impossible to find them. Animals have the same basic needs as us. They need food, they need water, they need shelter, and they need companionship. So if we know where these animals go to find food and water, we have a better chance of finding dinner ourselves. There's all sorts of different traps and snares and weapons we can make, but keep in mind it's not as easy as they make it out to be on TV. Take traps and snares, for example. You're going to need to spend time to set about 20 or 30 of those, and hope that something comes along. You might not. You might spend that energy and actually have nothing. But um, finding game trails will give you a better idea of where to set these traps. Just like the animals can lead us to water, water can lead us to the animals as well. So if we find a place where water is, the animals are probably going to be going there, so we can look for some of these game trails in that area right there. And we'll get into this more in the tracking portion of this workshop. But keep in mind that how many calories you're burning in the process of setting up traps and stuff like that. If we can figure out fishing stuff, fishing will take a lot less energy because basically you're sitting there, or you're setting that trap and you're waiting. If it would take a while to build one of these double layer nets right here, but wicker, I guess, baskets, not really a net. Um, but this is why I think it's important to have a fishing kit with us at all times, because a fishing kit is going to be better. It kind of tricks the animal better than using a pop top, a tin, that top of a pop can or something as a hook, or maybe a piece of bone or maybe a piece of wood. It's going to be a lot more effective using some of this fishing tackle. But if we don't have all of that stuff, we need to be able to make primitive tools like spears and hooks and nets and baskets and traps, if we don't have any other choice. But like I said, I think everybody should have some fishing tackle with them. Now, also there's plants, and what we should do is get to know the plants that grow in our area, um, that we might be in. And if we can't clearly identify a plant, and if we don't know if it's poisonous or not, do not eat it. Some poisonous plants actually mimic the non-poisonous plants. So get to know what those little differences are. What the leaves look like, what the root systems, and all of that stuff. And also plants growing near homes and occupied buildings, or even along roadsides, those might have been sprayed with like pesticides and stuff. So plants growing in contaminated water, and or water containing like Giardia and other parasites, those can be contaminated also. So we need to always make sure, if we're not sure about it, to boil and disinfect those plants, to make sure that they're safe. Now, there are some plants that every part of the plant can be eaten. Some plants, only the roots, or only the insides, and some plants only the leaves or berries can be eaten. So take your time to research your area and learn what can hurt you and what can help you. Purslane and cattails are good examples. The food these are found all over the North America, or all over the continent. Depending on the time of year, almost all of the parts of the cattail are edible, or even useful for something else. So kind of research those, and figure out all of the different stuff that you can do with the stuff that grows in your area. All right, so let's get into finding and building shelter here. Shelter consists more of just the roof over our heads. Shelter is anything that can protect us from the elements. Our clothes and anything that can insulate us from the elements is considered shelter. Most of us think of shelter as a lean-to or leaf hut or a debris hut, something like that. But shelter could be a bough bed, um, or a deer hide, or anything that could insulate us from the elements. And shelter needs to give us complete protection from the elements. And I know I've said from the elements 15 times, but that's what it is. That's why we're building the shelter. It needs to be able to ward off violent storms, maybe the hot sun if you're in the desert, high winds, frost in the morning, dampness. It all just depends on where you live. So, what is a good shelter? A good shelter must be able to keep you warm, even warm and dry, even if you don't have, blankets, coats, and sleeping bags, or heavy clothing. A shelter should provide a warm, dry work area, and I don't mean you need to have a separate compartment or anything, but you need to be able to, if you're trying to make tinder or something like that, have a place to do that inside, where it's keeping that stuff. Maybe it's raining or something. You need to keep that out of the rain, as well as a spot for you to sleep, and sleep comfortably, as comfortably as possible. So you can handle those important survival chores without being exposed to the weather as much as possible. A shelter also should give you a sense of security. It should be like your sanctuary, I suppose, a place where you can kind of rest and relax and kind of think and collect your thoughts, and know that, hey, okay, I got through today. Let's work on getting through another day. Now, there's different types of shelters. Natural shelters include any wilderness spots that you can find that are temporary, maybe the side of a mountain or something like that, or a rock overhang that'll give you a temporary refuge from a storm, or uh, any other events like that. These places are usually pretty meager. This they should only be used in dire emergencies. If it's getting to be dusk or something, and you need to find something quick, you might need to do that. If you need to seek, if you must seek natural shelter, simply do like the animals do. Find protection in shallow caves. You could, beneath fallen logs, something that is a windbreak, or overhangs, or brush tangles, or even next to the trunks of trees, that block you from the wind and all of that. My suggestion is that you take, if you have the time and you know that, hey, I've got a couple hours, I need to get on working on some shelter right now before it gets dark. You get that fire lit, get that shelter built and all that, so I don't have to um, hug a tree tonight and freeze my butt off. A lean-to will protect you from the wild and rain, but it won't retain the heat so much. You can place a fire in front of it, and it's going to reflect that heat inside the lean-to, but that's got to be a constant fire. And depending on the direction, if the wind's blowing straight into that, it's kind of useless. So you've got to make sure and set it up, and hope the wind doesn't shift and all of that. A debris hut is a little bit better than a lean-to, but it's a little more time intensive. It's going to protect you from all sides, and it is going to retain some heat. And like I said, you can put a fire in front of that, and it's going to retain more heat than just a lean-to would. And a bough bed can be used in conjunction with these as well. This can get you off the ground, and this is important because the ground will kind of suck the heat right out of you, and make you colder and all that. So, a properly made bough bed, a properly made bough bed as a tongue twister, is also going to be more comfortable than just sleeping on the rocks. And it's kind of, it'll give you some distance between those, the creepy crawlies and all of that stuff too. Excuse me. Now, just because we're learning these primitive skills doesn't mean that we can't use some of the tools that we have today, like the fishing kit, a tarp, these water filters, all that stuff. If we have those, yes, by all means, go ahead, and we need to use those. We need to take advantage of the Bic lighters we have and all that stuff. But it's also important to know how to do all of this stuff in case all of that stuff is gone, in case our Bic lighter gets wet and we can't light a fire, or something like that. In case our tent gets ripped and we're hosed, we need to know how to take that tent, maybe utilize it like a tarp, build a lean-to. We need to know all of this stuff. So let's go ahead. We're kind of running a little bit long. I want to try to stay on track here. Let's get into security. And security doesn't mean, just securing your perimeter or being able to fight off a bear or anything like that. Security also means knowing how to stay away from that bear, or anything else for that matter that might want to do you harm. The most important rule for any person who is kind of suddenly faced with a survival situation, whether that's rural, urban, or wherever, is to keep from panicking. Fear that overtakes you. Fear that overtakes someone who has just lived through, something major, a grid down event, or maybe you're lost in the woods or something like that. It really just overtakes you, and when you kind of realize that, oh crap, this is all, it's not good. And there's an acronym that I like, it's STOP, STOP, and STOP means, S is for stop. It means basically sit down, relax, and try to calm yourself down a little bit. And T is for think, and it's think about where you're at, what your situation is. Try to get some ideas about how you can kind of take this terrible situation and make it better. And O is for observe. After you've kind of thought about this stuff, kind of look at your surroundings and understand your surroundings, and think, hey, this is going to be okay. I just need to kind of follow this path, and everything's going to be fine. And P is for planning. Once you get all of this stuff figured out, then put a plan into action, because this is going to give you more confidence, because you're going to actually have, instead of just running or heading off somewhere, you're actually going to have a plan that you're going to you're trying to follow. So that's a good acronym I like, is the STOP acronym. S means stop, T means think, O means observe, and P means plan. So think, you like, with that as that goes, think about your actions before you take them. Injuring yourself could change, even if you have the best plan. If you injure yourself, that could screw everything up basically. It might take you longer to get from point A to point B, or you might not be able to make it at all. And also, we need to be mentally prepared to take action with no hesitation. And uncertainty is caused by the lack of knowledge, and hesitation is the product of fear. So we can second guess ourselves to death, literally. So if we can just take action without hesitation, and if you have weapons, whether they're for hunting or for protection yourself, be mentally prepared to use them. we all like to think that, having a handgun or something, we all like to think that we would be able to pull the trigger if the situation arose. But we need to make sure that without hesitation, we are ready to protect ourselves or our family. And also securing your perimeter, regardless of what situation you're in, um, whether that's urban or rural or anywhere, these valuable seconds that we have that setting up something on the perimeter could give us could be, I mean, just huge. In the wilderness, it could be something that alerts you from animals that are close by. Maybe there's a bear coming into your camp. In an urban setting, it could be something that alerts you to these potential unwanted visitors, and it gives you time to, maybe you're laying down and resting. It gives you that 10 seconds to get yourself ready to confront that situation. Now, securing your perimeter doesn't mean you need claymores and pit spikes and all of that stuff. Securing your perimeter could be something as simple as, a tripwire that makes noise to alert you, or something on a door, bells on a door if you're in an urban setting or something like that. Something that's going to give you, like I said, those valuable seconds to kind of get yourself ready. So let's go into trapping here. And with trapping or tracking, not trapping, tracking, you need to look for signs of animals, and knowing what signs to look for will help you. It's going to help you to know where to set those traps or to hunt for game. Um, knowing how to track wild game will also help you avoid being tracked yourself. And once we learn all of these tracking skills, we can see how other people, might be using these same things to actually track us, and we can do some things to try to avoid that. Um, you can with animal tracks, you can tell a lot of things by animal tracks. The size of the animal, the type of the animal, how long ago they were there, depending on how fresh that track is. Scarring also, like this tree right here. This is a great way of seeing how active an area is and how successful you might be in setting or hunting in that area. Scarring can be broken limbs, footprints, missing bark from trees, or deer rub, stuff like that. And also look for displacement. And displacement is when something is moved from its natural position, like a rock or leaves on the ground. And signs of displacement are, like I said, overturned rocks that leave kind of a dark hole underneath. You can tell that there's no foliage or anything growing on it, that's recently been moved. If the rock is overturned, maybe the moss is on the underside instead of the top of it. Also, animal scat is just as good as a footprint. You can tell how long ago the animal was there. You can tell what kind of animal was around. But you might you might have to get your hands a little dirty on this one to tell how fresh the animal scat is and all of that. And game trails are also another way that you can figure out where animals go. These can vary in size. Game animals are going to leave game trails. These are pretty easy to spot. And the smaller animals are also going to use these trails, but they're also going to create their kind of own game trails as well. And you can see this picture right here. It's got this looks like a deer trail or something. You can tell it's pretty big, but if you kind of imagine that these trees were blades of grass or something, you would have to get down to that eye level with that trail to actually see this, because if you look, say if you're looking above these trees, you probably wouldn't see this game trail all that well. But if you get down to the level where you can see where this trail leads, you'll have a better chance of finding, especially these small animals that you're looking for, and you can figure out maybe places to set traps. Maybe you can find where their den or their nesting, or where they travel to find food and water, stuff like that. And blazing, before we get done with this section, blazing is marking your trail so you can avoid getting lost. If you're traveling from your camp to find water, you want to make sure and just mark your trail so you know your way back. We always need to know how to get where we came from. And blazing can be marking a tree with your knife or anything that sticks out from the norm. If you have something that you can wrap around that tree, that's probably the best idea. Put a ribbon on there or something. But you need to make sure that it's at eye level. Oops, hit the microphone here. Make sure that it's at eye level, and it's visible coming and going from your destination. Because if you only mark one side of the tree as you're traveling to, say, a river, or you're scouting out the area or something, you're on your way back, you're not going to see that, and you're not going to have any idea where you were. So make sure and mark both sides of that tree. Now, avoiding being tracked, once you know how to track these animals, like I said, you can use these skills to avoid being tracked. You can use deception. If you have mud on your boots and you're walking in one direction, you can kind of walk that direction a little bit till the mud's gone, and then kind of reverse course and use these to kind of throw these people off. And this stuff not to leave. With breaking tree branches and stuff like that is a dead giveaway. Footprints and stuff like that is a dead giveaway. So if you know how to kind of avoid these things, that can kind of help you with your with avoid being tracked. Hopefully that would never happen, but you never know. All right, so let's get into the final one here, and then we'll get into the question and answer session. But navigation is the most important part of a situation you're in, because you can get lost in the city just as easily as you can in the woods. And the difference is that in the city, there's probably someone around that you can ask for directions, or somebody you can talk to. But you might not have that in the wilderness, and you might not want to do that in the future. You might not want to go up and ask somebody how to get from point A to point B, how to get to the local Walmart. But knowing how to get from point A to point B the safest and quickest way possible could literally mean the difference between life and death. In the city, we might be bugging out. In the wilderness, we might need to find a way to safety. And knowing how to read a map and compass is going to be a valuable skill to have. And anybody who purchases this course at the Academy, I'm also going to throw in the navigation course, because it really just ties in really well with this whole thing. But let's get into topographic maps and compasses and all of that stuff. Knowing the different markings on a topographic map, and knowing how to use how a base plate compass works, they're not as difficult as they seem. Once you get the feel for setting your bearing, stuff like that on a compass, and stuff like ridge lines and what a draw is on a topographic map, you start to feel pretty comfortable and confident about what you're doing. Even without a topographic map and a compass, you can still use nature's navigation tools. Believe it or not, men and women throughout history have been using navigating without a GPS. People like Daniel Boone had to rely on the sun, the plant life, the surroundings, the stars, and the animals to guide them to their destinations. Some of the ways there's some ways of doing this are like making a sun compass, where you put a stick in the ground, you wait 10 minutes, and you follow that sun shadow. I've got a video in the navigation course about that as well. A crescent moon can show you where south is, or generally south. It depends on the time of year. It's not going to be exactly perfect, but if you you draw an imaginary line from the top tip of the moon to the bottom tip, and you follow that line straight down, it's going to give you a general idea. It's not going to be true south or anything like that, but it'll give you an idea. And we've all heard the saying about moss and stuff, and I just want to spell that real quick. The old saying about moss being used on trees to indicate north. It's not accurate, because moss grows, it can grow all the way around some trees. And actually, growth is lusher on the side of the tree facing south in the northern hemisphere. And if it's in shade, all of that stuff is going to matter. And using the Big Dipper to find the North Star, if you can find the North Star, straight down from that is going to be north. You can use the Small Dipper, which is the end of the handle, or the Big Dipper. If you just follow that around where the pan kind of goes up at the end, it'll straight ahead of that is going to be the North Star, and then you can find where north is right there. You can find your direction by the way that trees grow. In the wild, in northern parts of the world, the sun spends most of its time in the southern part of the sky, and trees need sun. The wind will also affect the way a tree grows. If we know that the wind blows, northeast most of the time in our area, the tree is going to be more lush on that side that the wind kind of blows it to, or where it's the sun, it gets more sun, so it's going to be lusher on that side. Like you can kind of see from this tree, the tree's kind of stretching, either from the wind or the sun. It's kind of trying to stretch towards the sun. All right, so we're kind of running a little bit over on time here, but But sorry, I got distracted right there. We're running a little bit long on time, but with the links and the bonuses here at the end, there's a PDF that's going to go over, along with the PDF for the show notes here. I'm going to add a PDF that goes into using a map and a compass, an article that shows you how to do that. Um, so I have that on the links page as well. But let's go ahead and get into, let's see here. Okay, so that's it for that. And I want to explain to everybody before we get into this question and answer session. We have the today only for the next 24 hours. I have a half price special for full membership to the Academy, where you can get access to all the membership courses, the bug out course, the prepping 101 course, all of the different courses we're doing, the navigation course, and this course as well. I've also got a special price for this course, which I'll include the navigation course in as well, because I think it just really ties in to this module right here, or this course right here. It ties in really well. One of the benefits of becoming a full member of the Academy is you get access to the wholesale prices from some of our suppliers and some of the stuff at the shtfshop.com. You'll get all of the free books as we put those out. I'm in the process of writing another one right now. Lisa's got her Prepping A to Z books, and I think she's on D right now. So she's going to do A through Z, and right now she's only on D. So when those come out, we put those on the Academy. They're also for sale on Amazon, but Academy members get those for free. And also we run contests usually about once a month that are just for members only, to give more incentives. So between the membership price or the wholesale prices and the contests and all that stuff, you can easily make your money back from this. But I will leave the links for this stuff here for the next 24 hours to get these special prices. So make sure and take advantage of those while you can. And if you have any questions, just email me, dale@survivalsprepper.net, and we'll get everything figured out. But let's go ahead and talk about what is the most important tool you own. And to me, this is a knife. And I think, to me, a knife, I used to say water filter and stuff like that, but a knife can be used to make a water filter. A knife can use to make shelter. A knife can be used to do all of this stuff, to make containers, to make this different stuff that you're going to need. So in a survival situation, my main thing is that I have a knife available to me. Now, let's if you disagree with that, please kind of send me an email and let me know what you think. But if we have the tools that we have in our head, if we have the knowledge to do all of this stuff, and we have a knife on us, it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world, but we can get some of this stuff done. So let's see here. I'm going to try to do this without being too silent, because I'm trying to look up some of these emails that I've gotten. I've got a question or two that people submitted before I sent out an email and asked, and I appreciate everybody who did that. So let's see here. The first question I've got is, when, if ever, should I drink water that's not been purified? What if I don't have a way to do it? Water that, if you have the means to do it, I suggest purifying water at any time you get a chance. But if say you're lost or something like that, being found sick and alive is going to be better than being found dead. So if it comes down to survival, you're going to have to take your chances, and try to make an educated decision about where you're getting that water. Make sure it's from a not a stagnant pool or something like that. But there's going to, if it comes a time where you have to do it, then you just have to do it and kind of suffer through the consequences. So yeah, I mean, if it came down to life or death, I would drink the water. I would try to make it find a place with the cleanest water before I did it, but I would drink the water. All right. Next question I've got here is kind of funny. How many calories are in a worm? I didn't really go into insects, did I? How many calories are in a worm, and what insects are edible? I'm not sure. It probably depends on. I'm sure it depends on the size of the worm, but I'd say about 5 calories in a worm. And I forgot to mention this, and I should have. But insects are an excellent source of protein. but you shouldn't eat all of them. I mean, some insects you should avoid. Insects that you should avoid are ones that kind of sting and bite. Ones that are hairy or brightly colored, and this is not all of them, but these are the ones that I stay away from. Um, any insects that kind of have a pungent odor. These are the ones that, that first of all, they don't look too appealing, but none of them do. But these are the ones that I would stay away from. The ones that can sting or bite you, the ones that are all hairy and gross looking or bright and colored, and the ones that kind of stink. And these can be eaten, but you would need to boil them and get rid of all of that stuff. Um, you know, so. All right, let's see. Next question here. Okay, we've all heard the rule. Let me start that over. We've all heard that it's not good to eat snow. Why is that? Snow is water. And if we need water, and all that is available as salt water, why can't we drink that? Snow, there's a couple of different reasons why you don't want to eat snow directly. You can, it's not going to kill you or anything, but it with the crystals in the snow, it kind of cuts your tongue a little bit, at a very microscopic level, but that can lead to canker sores and stuff like that. Also, eating snow is going to lower your body temperature, and meaning that it's going to take a lot more energy. It's going to burn calories and water trying to maintain your body temperature. So you could actually kind of be doing yourself a disservice. Now, if there is snow, maybe find a container or some way to melt that. And then, it takes, I don't know how much snow it takes to get a gallon of water or a quart of water, but I think it's probably somewhere near 5 to 10 times the amount of snow to get water. But if you have a way of doing that, turn that into water and drink that, because it it your body temperature will stay at a consistent level and you won't burn all of those calories. But again, just like drinking non-purified water, if that's what you have, that's what you have. Say you don't have a container or anything, you know, eat some snow. Just know that you're going to be burning more calories and stuff like that. All right, so let's see here. If you're in the mountains or bugging out and got separated from, say I got separated from my family, how would you suggest that we meet back up? And this is kind of a tough one. It depends. It really depends on your situation. I would have a plan set ahead of time. If we get separated, it's always cool, or it's always good to remain cool and calm, and people not to just kind of run off and try to find you and end up being 15 miles further away from you and causing you to have to look further. But I would go over some of these skills with them, these blazing, making sure that people are marking where they've been and which direction they're going, using a couple sticks to point in a direction. Make sure that everybody understands this stuff, that when you get lost or whatever, either sit where you are, or if you have to move, make sure you're giving somebody some directions on where that you're going. That way everybody can meet back up. And then we've got a question here. How much water must the body lose before you die? This is a tough one. I'm not quite sure of this answer, and I'll have to look this up for you. But people feel thirsty when they've lost about 2 to 3% of their body water. And that's just, when you start to feel thirsty. So my guess is it would be, 10 to 15%. I'll have to look this up and email you, but even, just when we start to get thirsty, once we've lost that 2 to 3% of body water, our mental performance and physical performance start to kind of deteriorate. They become impaired when thirst kicks in. Typically, like I said, around 1 to 3% dehydration. And when we're sitting around the house and stuff like that, it's not much of a big deal. We don't see a big difference. But when you're in a survival situation, that might be a little bit more amplified. So it's always good to to stay hydrated and all that. And like I said, if I had to guess, it'd be about 10 to 15%. But I've got your email, so let me look into this and I'll email you back. I want to make sure and give you the correct answer. And let's see. What makes a good place to build a shelter? That depends on a few different factors as well. Your environment, the time of day, what your travel plans are, all of that stuff. Um, find an area, clear. You want to find maybe a low valley that's going to be a good windbreak. Um, but building a shelter in say a ditch or anything is a good way to stay out of the rain. But what happens? Say there's flash flooding or anything like that. That could be a dangerous place to shelter yourself. Something like a bear den or something might not be the best place to build shelter. But you just want to find a place that has the supplies, the materials that you need that are going to that are going to help you be able to make that shelter. You're going to need windbreak. You're going to need, as if you can find these natural structures that will help you build shelter, that'll just make your job easier. Sometimes that's not at all possible, but if you can find these, a windbreak might even not only just help you stay protected from the wind might, destroy your shelter. So you might have to find a place where your shelter is actually going to stay up. So, in a situation where, say, you have an hour's worth of light left or something like that, you might need to be a little bit hasty about that and figure out a place to build your shelter. But like I said, if you kind of plan ahead and you think about everything, you can take that last couple hours of the day or whatever and figure out, okay, this is shelter making time. This is where I need to kind of get warm because it's gonna get really cold tonight, and I don't want to be sitting out here in the middle of nowhere. All right, so I think that about wraps it up this week. I do appreciate everybody joining in. I hope you guys got some information out of it. Like I said, we're going to go into a whole lot more in the academy about this. I've got a whole course that's going to go through a lot of details, some how-to videos, and all of that stuff on the academy. So I'd say take advantage of these special offer price if you can. The half price offer for members. You get all of the courses that we create now, and you can choose a yearly, choose a lifetime plan. Lifetime plan means you get everything that we create in the future, any of these webinars, a lot of the replays, just a lot of cool stuff. Some of the archived versions of the podcast are going to be on the membership site as well. So and you get a chance to help out Survivalist Prepper, help us out with the podcast, and help us continue to do what we're doing. All your free downloads and everything will be at survivalistprepper.net. PS links, and I will leave once this webinar is done, and I'll put the replay up, and I'll leave that actual link. It might take me about a half an hour to get all of this stuff figured out, but if you guys come back to this same page in about a half an hour, you'll get the replay of the webinar, and I'll have a button set up where you actually get this. I'll send you straight to that link. But with that, hey, I appreciate everybody. I'm going to get out of here. If you do have any further questions or anything, feel free to email me at dale@survivalistprepper.net, and I'll get back to everybody. But I do appreciate it. And the next webinar or workshop, I think we're going to do either on just water or first aid skills, something like that. I'll send out a survey and ask everybody what they would like the next workshop to be about. But with that, I appreciate everybody joining in today, and we'll talk to y'all soon. And like I said, leave me an email if you need to. Thanks a lot.